All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, August 25th, 2023. This is your morning tropical update where this morning we have a new area of interest to talk about in the Gulf of Mexico. Our area we've been talking about since last Friday on the page is looking a little more likely to develop today. Potentially will have impacts to Florida and maybe the central Gulf Coast going into next week. Sometime around Wednesday, we're looking for the potential for a tropical system of some kind to come up into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So that'll be the primary focus of today's video. We'll also have the rest of the tropics going on. We have Tropical Storm Franklin hanging out north of Puerto Rico. We have two other areas of interest. I think that's what used to be Emily, and then we have this wave we've been tracking since like the beginning of the season, I guess. It's been here forever. Both of these might develop, but they're fish food. They're nothing to worry about. And right now, Franklin is nothing to worry about. Latest in the NHC shows it becoming a hurricane, but snaking up between Bermuda and the East Coast, well away from both. Some swell waves, rip currents, that sort of thing. But it does not appear Franklin will be impacting the U.S. in any serious concerns, thankfully enough. And that leaves our little friend down here in the Gulf of Mexico. 70% chance to develop today from the National Hurricane Center. I would expect an invest tag on this soon. They don't have it out yet, but this will likely become invest. I think 93L is the next one up. So sooner than later, this will be a tagged invest. But we do have a couple of days before it really gets cranking. So, we'll see what time they want to go with that. But this is the latest satellite presentation of the storm this morning. It's nothing to write home about right now. It does look kind of like broad and messy, and that's exactly what it is. There's probably some low pressure center down here in the Western Caribbean here this morning, all rotating in the more broad low pressure. As I talked about in my little post late last night, this is basically all you have a couple little teacups on the teacup ride at the amusement park spinning around on the platform. So like the whole low would be the bigger platform. These little mezzo lows would be like the little teacups. And they're all kind of swirling around each other down there. But it's also being fed by this upper level low that's moving across the Gulf of Mexico. It's moving back into Mexico proper, and that's kind of dredging up this tropical moisture, and you kind of have this converging area right here. But it all is all being kind of squished right now because we have this big high pressure over the eastern U.S. off your screen. This is ridging down to the south like this. So this is kind of squishing and stamping all this down into the tropics where it will have to sit for several days near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. So we expect this to pretty much sit here through the entire weekend. So it's Friday morning when we're recording this. We're expecting it all day Saturday and all day Sunday to not move a whole lot and consequently probably not develop a whole lot. But eventually, what's going to happen is some kind of low pressure is going to form somewhere, probably near the edge of the Yucatan, probably just over the water, and then it's going to move northward towards Florida. Now, we have a tropical system moving into the Gulf of Mexico in late August. That's usually pretty scary. And this year, it's a little scary because the waters are so warm. However, this wave is going to have a bit of an issue. We'll show you the general thought here, and then we'll show you some of the specifics. First of all, European model, just showing you how this may play out. This is Friday morning. It shows the broad area of low pressure by the Yucatan. No surprise there. The European basically sits this over the Yucatan until really Monday morning. This is Monday almost Monday evening on the European model before it really starts to consolidate a low pressure area and begin to move northward. This would be like tropical depression, maybe tropical storm status right here. Probably depression status would be the most likely thing. But it just starts moving late on Monday. This is 0Z Tuesday, which is late Monday in local time. This begins to get on the move, and then this moves northward throughout the day on Tuesday. This is early Wednesday morning, and for now, the European's latest run shows a landfall somewhere near the Big Bend. Now, I'm not showing this because I think exactly what's going to happen. I'm just saying this is the general area of which something may want to landfall and the general thought of how this works. So it festers for a couple days. Monday evening into Tuesday morning, it begins to move and it crosses the Gulf into Florida sometime on Wednesday. That's the latest thoughts. Now, the road ahead of the storm is not perfect. We do have very warm water, like I said, across the Gulf. The Gulf is bathwater, red hot. It always is hot this time of year, but it's like even hotter than normal, which is a little concerning. But the good news is there at least appears to be some wind shear and some roadblocks out ahead. First of all, wind shear map from the European model shows the upper level wind flow is not going to be particularly favorable. This strong belt of westerly winds will be present on Tuesday morning as the storm is trying to leave the Yucatan, as it appears, and there'll be some more shear from this upper trough moving in. So the Gulf of Mexico looks like it's going to have some traffic, and these upper level winds that aren't associated associated with the storm do impart that wind shear on the system and cause some interruptions. So we think as the system leaves the Yucatan early next week, it's going to be dealing with some wind shear. It's going to be dealing with some dry air. The GFS relative humidity model also showing that as well. All these models, of course, are over on Tropical Tidbits. Fantastic site. Highly recommend you check it out during hurricane season. It is a invaluable resource. This time of year consolidates all the models, the hurricane hunter data, the satellite, you name it, they got it here. It's awesome. Anyway, GFS relative humidity model here. You see the low pressure center stamped at 1,005 millibars. That's a developing tropical storm. It's trying to get itself together. Maybe still a weak depression or weak tropical storm, strong depression, whatever. But there's a lot of brown on this map around that low, which means not only is there dry air present near the storm, but it's infiltrating the storm. So what's probably going to happen is this is going to look much more like a June tropical storm or a July tropical storm, where they're weighted on one side. You can see all the greens on this side, the heavy rains coming up on the right side, but the other side is probably going to have a lot of dry air. So it's going to choke it off some, and that will help also to measure the intensification increase, assuming that dry air is there. So if you have some wind shear and you have some dry air on the storm, it's probably going to make it a harder time for it to develop. So we don't expect a massive monster category 3 or 4 or 5 hurricane coming into the Big Bend of Florida. We don't expect another freaking Ian or something, but we do expect this to be able to overcome some of these obstacles because of the warm water. So for now, the thought is that a somewhat healthy tropical storm could be moving into the Big Bend or Tampa or even further off to the west in the next couple of days. Our computer models are still sort of split on what this looks like. The European model has consistently shown a storm for the most part with a few hiccups in its runs, but mostly it is showing a storm near the Big Bend. You can see some of the European models that lie more into South Florida are weaker runs. The blues and light blues are weak runs or weaker storms. And then the stronger simulations are green and yellow, showing a more developed storm probably pulls a bit further north. This makes some sense because it has more time over water versus a shorter time here, and probably just sees a little less wind shear, dry air, or whatever. The steering flow is probably not going to change a whole lot. I don't think there's many outliers. There is some chance that maybe the central Gulf Coast is still in play, but I would say like the Mississippi-Alabama border is probably your absolute leftmost goalpost, and to the right, probably like Cape Coral. So that's probably your goalpost right now. But again, the Big Bend is probably the most likely area, like Tampa to Apalachicola or Appalachia Bay or whatever, right there. It's probably your most likely landfall point right now. The steering flow is pretty easy to figure out. You've got the high pressure that's over the U.S. right now backs off as this trough moves in. So you can see this trough here on Tuesday and Wednesday, sharp trough over the Great Lakes. This is what's picking up our storm, pulling away from Yucatan and pulling it out to sea with the upper level flow. Also, Franklin moves out and then a high pressure builds in behind Franklin. This is also going to shove our storm off to the west. High over here moves away, and you've got this pathway open for our storm to lift northward. So there's a potential impact. It's really too early to call impacts. I just want to give you a rough idea. If this were to come in as, say, a mid-grade tropical storm, a 60, 65 mile an hour tropical storm, these are the potential wind gusts, upper 50s, low to upper 40s for like northern Florida, mid to upper 40s and 50s for like central Florida, and then, the western part of Florida where it comes ashore, you could see higher gusts than that. Rainfall totals don't look that prolific because the storm will be moving pretty quick. It's going to make landfall and pass across Florida in probably 12 hours or less from start to finish. So you won't have time for the rain to really build up, and this won't be a huge rainmaker anyway because it'll have that dry air on the one side. So it's going to be kind of right weighted, and you can see a belt here of 2 to 4 inches of rain. It's not going to be nothing, but it's not going to be like a massive flooding disaster by any stretch because of the fast forward speed, moves in, moves out. Doesn't really bother anybody too much, but we do want to respect it when it does come in. You have the potential for tornadoes. You definitely are going to have some heavy rain at times, which could lead to some localized flash flooding. And of course, tropical storm force winds can take down power lines, take down trees, cause some damage and such. So, you don't want to think it's going to be nothing, but may not be the biggest deal in the world. So that's what I got for you guys this morning in the broad brush. I'm not going to go any more detail than that because honestly, we've got days to watch this. I mean, we're going to be talking about this Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's going to be several days of watching, and we don't have an organized center yet. We have a very broad, messy storm. It's going to take days to consolidate. And again, where it consolidates matters. Maybe it winds up over here when it takes off. And then we are talking about the west side of the cone. Maybe it develops over here and it races across South Florida. I mean, there's a lot of potential outcomes. Until we know what this thing's going to look like, we can't really tell too much much, but it does appear that a tropical system of some kind is going to impact western Florida. So if you're in Florida, especially central, northern, and western Florida today, I would probably take the weekend, put some gas in the car, and maybe make sure you got a little bit of extra food for the week ahead. Maybe do your grocery shopping a little early. I wouldn't run for the hills. I wouldn't abandon ship, or anything like that. But if you're watching something like this, you're tuned in much more than the average person is. The average person isn't gonna know about this till probably Monday or Tuesday, so you can get the jump on them, get what you need to get, and just be ready for whatever happens or doesn't happen to happen. There's some cases where this may just fizzle and not be a big deal. El Nino years, sometimes that happens, but I think the potential for a tropical storm is definitely there in the next couple of days. So we will have plenty more. We'll have the Hurricane Hunter data when they get there, probably later on in the weekend, early next week. We got plenty more to come on this. So don't worry about it too much just yet, but I would be getting at least kind of prepared for what's to come. Other than that, the tropics are quiet. Nothing else is going to bother us in the next week or so. So we'll make it through Labor Day with just this mess to worry about. So that's what I got for you guys today. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.